This is Sportswatch on 6 News. I'm Leo Puglisi. That's Lachlan Sheriff. We don't know where Tim Ewing is, but it's good to be back for another big week. And if we talk about big weeks in the NPL, I don't think many come bigger than what you saw on the weekend. South Melbourne versus Preston at Lakeside. Massive game there, of course. Two clubs that will be in the Australian Championship, which we'll discuss just a little more a little later. But look, South has slightly been on the up in recent weeks. We have been talking all year on Sportswatch, Lachlan, about could South Melbourne be relegated? Now, could they? Absolutely. Still, there's 2-3 relegation spots, right? It's rough territory for them. They're only kind of just hovering over them at the moment, but they were able to get the win on Sunday evening. Talk about the match and the atmosphere.
Well, look, this was a big game for both teams. We had the reverse fixture back in Preston a few months ago. That was the first time that these two teams have met in the league in a long time. Obviously, Preston had just come up into the NPL again. You come back now to the reverse fixture in Lakeside. Again, this is the first time they've played each other in Lakeside in the league in a very long time. So it's going to be a big game. And you could tell the atmosphere was going to be great, but I was blown away just by how good it was. I thought the South Melbourne fans were brilliant. I thought the Preston fans who were sitting on the other side of Lakeside, which, keep in mind, is very rarely ever open. So goes to show you what a big game this was. So the away bay was great from the Preston fans. They had a tifo. South Melbourne fans are doing great with their chance. They had a trumpet as well. So look, it was a great atmosphere, and I think it's a great advertisement for the league. As for the game itself, the first half was a bit, I'd say, scrappy. I'd say a bit congested. I didn't really think anyone was that close to scoring in the first half. At a half-time, I thought it ended 0-0, but not to be, because Preston scored first. Their fans went crazy, and you kind of feel at this point that maybe Preston are going to win, and it's going to get worse for South Melbourne. But look, they get a couple of goals, of course. Max McCullough with that bicycle kick at the end of the game, and they win 2-1. I think it's a result they very desperately needed, because now they're looking safe. Maybe not safe, but they're definitely looking better than they were a few weeks ago. So a huge win for them, and it's definitely a famous win over their rivals. So it was a great game, and well done to South Melbourne getting the 3 points, because very good ending.
Yeah, I unfortunately wasn't able to be there, but from the images I've seen on social media, and I think the camera can be kind of misleading because there's one camera on one side. You don't see the Preston fans, and there were a lot of them. And it's always good when you have both sides of Lakeside open. It is, and obviously you don't see it on the broadcast. That's kind of the whole point. But it is always a bit weird when we're sitting there one side and you're looking over an empty, a completely empty side, and it does. Always, really make things even better in terms of atmosphere when you're able to open up both sides. You would be thinking that you could probably see both sides open quite a lot more into the future with the Australian Championship and, of course, any other big games that South Melbourne would be lucky enough for themselves to be involved in. Look, have they done enough at this point, South Melbourne? Maybe not yet. There's still, I think, enough weeks for things to go sour. But have they done enough at this point, do you think, Shezza, for relegation to be avoided? Because looking at it a month and a half ago, right, they were bottom. They were, talking about putting them in the same basket as Port Melbourne right now. And they've really picked up both in the Doherty Cup games that they played and also, of course, the NPL games.
Yeah, look, you look at the table now. South Melbourne currently sit 9th. We have 8 games to go. They're sitting 9th with 5 points ahead of St Albans, who are in 12th, which is St Albans, Port Melbourne, and Knights right now in the relegation zone. You think South Melbourne have done enough at this point to get past that. You look at the results. They've had 3 wins and a draw in their last 4 games. That's, makes up more than half of their points all season. So they've had a very good last month or so. Are they safe? I'm not going to call them officially safe. Obviously, anything can go wrong. They're not mathematically safe yet. If St Albans get on a run, and if Melbourne Victory and Altona do a couple of things as well, they're still there. However, I do think at this point, the Hallis fans are looking at this and thinking, okay, we're in a much better spot than we were a month ago, where, 5 points clear. St Albans haven't been winning much. Port Melbourne and Knights have pretty much been cooked all season. So you look at the table, I feel like they might just be safe, but even still, it's not been a great season. But if they can survive, and also they've made a very good run in the Doherty Cup, if they can go on and win the Doherty Cup and, survive in the NPL, sure, it wouldn't be the ideal season at the start of the year, but you consider where they were a month ago, I'd say that's a pretty good season for them, all things considered.
Yeah, we know how big a South Melbourne relegation would be as a story. That's no disrespect, of course, to St Albans, Port Melbourne, or the Melbourne Knights. Mind you, a Melbourne Knights relegation would still be absolutely significant, and that is also very much possible, but we will wait and see. And that is, of course, the beauty of having a system with promotion and relegation in it, which I know we all enjoy here at Sportswatch and on Six News. The championship is starting to feel a lot more real, though. We saw just the other day the official reveal of the trophy that was, as you would have seen, very prominently displayed at Lakeside on Sunday evening. I really like the design of it. I think it complements the A-League toilet memorabilia, I think, pretty well in terms of being in the second tier. It's an interesting position where we have half of the slots, literally half of them. They're already locked in terms of we know who's going to play. South Melbourne, of course, being relegated in the NPL, but still playing in the second tier nationally would be an interesting dilemma if that happens. Of course, you've got Preston up there as well. But look, so many unknowns at this point. Looking at the NPL Victoria ladder for starters here, who are the clubs that have a chance of getting in? And it is also worth just pointing out here, it isn't going to be the champions, it is the premiers. So essentially for our AFL viewers, the minor premiers who will be the ones qualifying here, of course, as long as they're not an already qualified side. Who's leading Victoria?
Look, in Victoria, I think Heidelberg are pretty much safe for the championship spot. Not necessarily to win the premiership. Keep in mind, Avondale are only 1 point behind them. But with Avondale already locked into the championship, even if Heidelberg end up coming second, I think they still get the spot. So look, I think they're safe. You know, Dandenong Thunder and Oakley Cannons were still there. They were definitely fighting for a long time. However, they both lost on the weekend. They've both been a little out of form recently. So I'm starting to think that, okay, it's going to be Heidelberg in Victoria. Look over to New South Wales. You've got a pretty good fight over there. You've got Rockdale City, who are currently up top. Again, Marconi are already in the championship, so they can't qualify. They're currently sitting in second on equal points with Rockdale. However, Marconi aren't going to make it. They're already in it, sorry. So look at that. That's interesting. NWS Spirit, though, they're right there as well. So there's definitely a few teams you can look at over in New South Wales and think, okay, they're with the shot. Metro Stars are going to win the premiership in South Australia, you would assume. That's going to be great to see them in the championship. They're a big club. They've got a lot of history. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. If you look at over to Western Australia, you've got Bayswater up top right now. That'd be an interesting club. They always have a great fan base and a great stadium. So seeing them on a national stage would be pretty cool. And finally, if we go over to Queensland, which is all a little bit topsy-turvy because of the cyclone. There's still been matches delayed. Queensland Lions on top right now. However, you look at that, for example, Gold Coast Knights are 9 points behind them and have played 3 games less because of obviously matches being postponed. So Queensland, we're still not really sure what's happening, but look at it. You look at, Rockdale, you look at Heidelberg, you look at Metro Stars. There are going to be some big clubs who look like they're going to be joining the original 8 in the championship. So it's definitely shaping up now. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting couple of months over here in the NPL to see who makes the championship. And then once we get to the championship, to see who's the best of the best. Because there's a lot of good teams out there in the NPL right now who could claim that they are.
Yeah, and of course, we already were able to see the draw the other week, as we know. And look, we'll be discussing the championship a lot more as it approaches. We'll have real special coverage here on Sportswatch. But, we're talking about, the potential setting up of a system where these are the clubs that are going to be playing in the top tier, and they're wanting to be playing in the top tier of Australian football. And if they're able to compete on another national stage, that in itself is significant. Compete with some big clubs. If we see a few upsets, whether we can have a bit of a magic of the Australian Championship going, I think that would be really, really significant just for the game as a whole, and to kind of legitimize both the non-A-League clubs, but also the idea of having promotion and relegation at the national scale in full. But of course, we will wait and see on that. Meanwhile, in terms of new things coming up, big announcement from the NBL only just came in before we started to record Sportswatch. Shezza, you're the expert here, so I'll let you run through it.
Well, look, it's been something that the NBL have been hyping up for a long time now. We have finally found out what it is. It's going to be an in-season tournament in the NBL. Now, this is obviously, we talked about it on last week with the AFL. That was floated around. But I think you look more so into the NBA and WNBA in America, where this has been a thing. So look, it's called the NBL Ignite Cup. There's going to be a game every Wednesday. $400,000 on the line. Obviously, that's a lot of money. And what's interesting is not only every game matters in this little system, but every quarter counts. So if you win a quarter, I believe you get some type of point. So it's definitely interesting right now because you look at, there's a lot of good teams. You look at, for example, Adelaide have built an incredible roster. Melbourne United are looking as strong as ever. You've got, Tasmania looking to bounce back. Illawarra just won the championship. So there's a lot of teams who play in this league system who are pretty good. If you put them in this little cup contest where I'm looking at it now, there's not many games. There's only going to be a few games for each team before the final, which is going to be sometime in February. So it starts in October, ends in February, and there's one game a week. So you really have to lock in straight away because it's a pretty short format. I think it's a good move for the NBL because look, we talked about last week in the AFL. I wasn't necessarily a fan of that. As for the NBL, I think it's a good move. Only one game a week is pretty fine by me. The NBL's basketball's obviously not as a physically taxing sport as AFL, so one extra game on Wednesday I don't think hurts too much. And hey, if it gets more fans out to the game and it improves the product, I don't see why we wouldn't have it. So I'm definitely excited to see what this is going to be. I know the NBL are very excited. They've been hyping up their little Flash logo for a while now, and yeah, it should be good. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
In terms of matches played, I think a lot of people who maybe don't follow basketball will be a bit surprised at how many games in a regular NBA season over in the US, if you want to talk about game load. And look, interesting you mentioned they're playing on Wednesdays. Now, look, maybe I'm a bit of a sicko here. I like midweek sport. I really do enjoy it. Depending on circumstances, that can include both just watching it and actually going to a, I've been enjoying either Monday night games in South Melbourne. There's been Tuesday night games, of course. I think Thursday night AFL is a good thing, but I digress. Look, NBL is obviously not the leading league in terms of various sports competitions in Australia at the moment. Not that they're dire in terms of fans or anything like that, but you think they're going to be able to attract a decent enough crowd for these Wednesday games, or is it really they're just hoping that it'll be able to lock in the broadcast market more so, because of course you won't be having in general much competition from other sports in that time slot?
No, you won't. And look, I think this is a pretty good move by the NBL because let's be real, there's not much Wednesday sport, is there? Like you said, the AFL have kind of got Thursday down. There's always, going to be a Monday game every now and again. I can't really think of much Wednesday sport. So I think this is a really good move by the NBL to stamp Wednesday night as their own. Now, I'm not sure whether these games are going to be on Feedaway. I doubt they will be, to be honest. I think they'll just be on KO, which is kind of a shame because I'm sure a game on Feedaway would get a lot of attention on a Wednesday night when there's nothing else. But even still, I do think a lot of people with a KO subscription are going to be tuning in to the Ignite Cup on a Wednesday because what else is there to watch? So look, this is a great move by the NBL. It's a great marketing move, not only for the fact that we're going to have another champion now, another tournament, $400,000 on the line, but like you said, also to really stamp down that Wednesday time slot as their own, like the AFL have done with Thursday nights, for example. So I think it's a great move by the NBL. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
Yeah, we'll watch closely for that. And shifting over to the AIHL, big weekend, of course. Now, we were hyping up only last weekend the arrival of David Booth here in Australia. And I know Tin was a big fan, big enough that he was actually able to score an interview. So he's not here, but he's here in spirit. This was David Booth speaking to Six News' Tin Nguyen over the weekend.
It's fun playing here. I've been really enjoying myself. I couldn't be more excited and grateful for the opportunity to play for the Melbourne Ice. It's just an incredible experience through my professional career to come here and just experience this hockey. The guys have made me feel part of their team right away, so to go out and win against a rival like this means a lot.
Yeah, and obviously you're in Australia. It's obviously not thought of as a hockey country, but the Ice are probably one of the most famous, most big teams, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. But clearly you haven't felt any of that at all. You've got 12 points to the season. You got the 5 points tonight, a goal, 4 assists, and of course there was that big hat trick last week against, I believe it was the Central Coast Rhinos. I mean, clearly you're settling in well here in Australia.
Yeah, I think through my career I've maybe faced a little bit bigger, more pressure situations, but it is, when someone brings you in, they have high expectations for you, and so with that comes pressure, with that comes responsibility, but I've been doing this now for 20 years, so you kind of learn from that, and you just you enjoy it. You enjoy being sought after, or someone wanting to bring you here. That means a lot to me, that they still have faith in my skill and my ability, and so I want to prove that I belong here and can produce. So yeah, that was just a great start so far.
Yep, and looking ahead this weekend, you guys play the Perth Thunder, who have been one of the better teams this year. Obviously, the Ice is still on top, and I'd imagine you're looking to continue this goal-scoring form. Obviously, you've done well, you've put points on the board, and I imagine you just kind of want to keep that going against a big opponent.
Yeah, I saw that. They started out really well, this team. So it's fun playing different teams. That was my first game against them, and I look forward to tomorrow. Quick turnaround. Hopefully, we can keep that momentum going because we played well tonight as a team, and we got to keep it going. So I think when you keep building on momentum, that's what very good teams do. They keep building on momentum. We need to do that.
David Booth there. The other big announcement coming in from the aihl in recent days was the announcement of finals tickets. They're already on sale. All games will be played in Melbourne at the O'Brien Ice House. You'll have the top 6 teams competing for the Goodall Cup. So it begins Friday, the 29th of August. It will conclude Sunday, the 31st of August. I'm a bit more new to ice hockey, so that's a fast final series. But look, that's part of the sport, right? It has been very fast paced. We've had some great back and forth games in Melbourne over really just the past few days that you and Tin have been able to get to. But look, currently it's still a very close race in terms of who's actually going to make those top 6, even though you've got the first position seems virtually locked in at this point. What do you make of it? Just from a broad perspective, that having it that far. So 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. you'll have 2 prelim finals on the Friday. Sunday, the 31st of August, the final game that'll be on the at 2 p.m. For what it's worth, prelim and semi-final are kind of used differently to maybe the opposite how you'd use it in the AFL for, again, those who are newcomers. But yeah, what do you make of such a fast-paced final series?
I love it. I think it's, think of if you're an AFL fan, think of Gather Round, for example. If you're a soccer fan, think of Unite Round. I think this is almost like AIHL's version of that, because sure, there's a bit more on the line, of course, but you've got all these games happening at such a fast pace in the same city, in the same stadium. I believe it's set over 4 days. And at the end of the day, someone wins a trophy. It's the final. So I love this initiative the AIHL have always done, and they're going to do it again this year. I'll probably try and go to all the games, I'll be honest, because I think for me, a league like the AIHL, it's so important to really capture your fan base. And I think they've done a great job of that. You obviously can look at Canberra, for example, with the new stadium. You can look down here in Melbourne with the Ice and the Mustangs. I really do feel like there's going to be even more of an initiative now to get out to these finals games, even if it's not an Ice or a Mustangs playing. Because, look, 6 out of the 8 teams make it. It's a pretty big tournament. There's a lot of days of ice hockey on. So I would definitely recommend going down to the O'Brien Ice House, because for me, you're going to see the best hockey we've seen all season. And yeah, I just cannot wait for it. I think it's going to be awesome.
And even that 3 p.m. Friday time slot, I've gone to sports, mid early arvo on Fridays before. I like that time slot. Just personally, it works around my school schedule. But you can imagine you're going to have people who would be able to get off and get off school, and maybe they've had a morning work shift. They're able to actually go down, and then they can stay for another match at 7 p.m. Right? It's so, I think, well timed in that regard, because unlike the AFL, you don't have to. There is literally not as much time as AFL games, so it's able to be a lot more compact. They're actually able to do this kind of thing instead of for instance, the Saturday matches are 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. right? In the AFL, you'd be having 12:30 and 7 p.m. right? So it's really, really well done like that. So yeah, I think it'll be exciting. I think a lot of people will be able to get down. We've seen the crowd numbers. We've seen them talk before about over in Canberra, but in Melbourne, the atmosphere has been energetic at every game that you and Tin have been at, which is, of course, really positive to see, isn't it?
Of course, AIHL, maybe not the biggest league in Australia, but it's a growing sport, and there's such a strong fan base, which I've loved viewing and seeing just as much as I've loved seeing the action on the ice. I mean, I talked about it in previous weeks, but you go to one of the Melbourne derbies, for example, it is absolutely packed with both fan bases, and they're at the restaurants outside the stadium before the games. They're packing out the ice house to the point that people have to stand behind the seats and around the ice, absolutely packed in there. They always sell it out. So I'm just so impressed by Melbourne ice hockey fans, and I really think we're going to do it again in August for the final. So definitely looking forward to seeing it. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting end to the season though, because look, there's 6 spots. There's pretty much anyone can make it to the finals at this point. There's going to be a lot of action, but it's going to be a good ending, and then we're going to be treated with an incredible final series to win it off. So I can't wait.
Absolutely, we will cover it closely. That's Sportswatch for this week. Of course, all previous episodes you can stream whenever you want here on 6 News. Give us your thoughts, give us your comments, and anything you would like to see as well. Tinuin may or may not be back next week. Lachlan Sheriff may or may not be back next week. I will probably be here somehow again, but you'll see it regardless next week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.